Hi, it's Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO here in beautiful Montreal, welcoming you to another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. We're part of Fractional Pros Canada, the home for Canada's fractional community, and you can find us on Facebook. We bring you conversations about everything fractional that matters for fractional executives and businesses from coast to coast. Think of this as your go-to spot for real talk, practical wisdom, and strategies you can actually use, all without the corporate fluff and with plenty of Canadian content. Whether you're a fractional pro or a business in our great country of Canada and beyond, this conversation is for you. Grab your espresso and let's dive in. Welcome to the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. I'm your host and fractional CMO, Robert Mendelson, here in beautiful Montreal. And joining us today from just down the street in Ottawa is Robin Sauve. Robin is a CRO/leverage architect who helps experienced fractional leaders turn their expertise into authority, building a clear, visible, and sellable revenue engine that sustains momentum while they serve their clients. This episode is sponsored by Fractional Pros Canada, the home of Canada's fractional executive community. It's the place where over 1,600 Canadian fractional executives gather to connect, share, learn, and refer. You can learn more at fractionalproscanada.ca. Robin, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me here.
So we have a lot of ground we're going to cover today, Robin, but I want to start with something that I think, and you will confirm or disavow this statement that I believe I either read or you told me a while back, which was that you have thousands of LinkedIn connections and that you have personally connected with every single one of them. Is this true or false?
True. So when I've had my LinkedIn profile for better part of a decade and a half, right? So the start of that, I did not use LinkedIn effectively. In the last 2 years, maybe 3 years, I've turned that around. It's just not my standard. So I would say that I've connected personally with over 4,000, over 5,000 of my connections, where I reach out personally, have a conversation, get to know them a little bit. That's pretty much where it lands these days.
So you have an actual, we're not talking about like a quick LinkedIn message. We're talking about an actual phone or kind of like a Zoom conversation?
More LinkedIn message, DMs, just connect with people. Not everybody's open to that. Half the people assume you're selling something, right? But just given where today AI, the way the people are connecting nowadays, I just feel it's more human to connect, to reach out, to get to know who you're connecting with. I like to say that the connect and forget isn't my standard, right? A lot of people do that. They'll connect. They'll never speak to somebody. They'll never reach out. They'll never know who they connected with.
And are most of these connections people who reached out to connect with you, or you reached out to connect with
both? It's a mix of both. My connection requests as well as my outreach is done daily. Really, like there's always people reaching out. There's always people looking to connect with me, and vice versa.
So let's talk about when you connect with somebody. I assume that at least some of the time it's in the context of perhaps eventually doing business with a prospect.
Well, it always is, right? I mean, it's a professional network. The goal is to connect, right? To actually get that human connection with somebody. So it's not automated. It's not AI generated, but to have that human connection. The flip side of it is, hey, if we find a way to work together, even better.
And so do you have some kind of formula, so to speak, that works when you reach out to somebody, you send them a connection request? Do you include a note, a message with that connection request, or is it simply just a plain connect with me?
Over the years, I've tried a number of different ways. I find sending an initial message, you get fewer acceptances. So I don't send an initial message. When somebody connects with me, I reach out, just a nice to connect, really simple message. I do find the words are important. The way we use our words are important. And really, I mean, it's the people that reach out and make an assumption of what somebody else needs those messages usually get ignored, right? I don't know you yet. We haven't connected yet, right? So uh, actually, the other day, somebody asked me, well, what are you trying to sell? I'm like, well, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I said, I don't even know you yet. We haven't spoken yet. So why would I want to assume that I want to work with you? Right. So to have that connection, to get to know somebody, to be human about it. And in the process, if we find a way to work together, we work together and then we go from there. Right. But um, when it comes down to it, I work with people I like. And if we're not a fit, we're not a fit.
So the fractional's dream, right? Choose your clients, choose who you want to work with.
Right.
That's one of the big upsides of being a fractional. When you start engaging with that prospect, so you're having a conversation, is there some kind of formula you follow where the first or second or third questions or whatever you send them is going to follow some kind of template, or is it really a brand new conversation that you're having in a really, as if you were meeting that person, at a coffee shop for the first time?
Right. It's always a brand new conversation. Everybody will come in. Although when you start, I mean, you probably find this no matter what you do, as you start doing it, you realize that every new client has similar problems. But from the perspective of the client, they're all different. It's their problem. It's their unique problem they're trying to solve. So to have that conversation with somebody, they're approaching it from their lens, right? So to be able to have a real conversation, that just flows the way it does. Now, there are cues, there are certain stages within the conversation that it makes sense to ask certain things. So do questions sometimes get repetitive? Maybe, but they're always based on the individual conversation at hand. So nothing's reused, so to speak.
Nothing's canned, nothing is prefab.
Right.
It's
Right.
and you're really playing to the strength of, as we say in marketing, know your customer, know your audience, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I don't know if this is still your tagline because I pulled this off your profile a while back, but at least it was at some point. Master the power of your brand.
That's evolved.
Okay.
I spent 30 years working in advertising, marketing, branding. And when I reapproached LinkedIn, that was the perspective I was taking. What I realized since then is where I bring value, that leverage that comes in ends up being between brand, marketing, and sales, right? So, and customer experience on top of that, right? So that's sort of where the leverage is built to solve problems from. So now my tagline's shifted. Not sure exactly what it is. It's leverage makes revenue predictable.
Leverage makes revenue predictable.
When you
Okay.
connect all the pieces, when you connect brand, when you connect marketing, when you connect the sales, when you connect client experience, that produces predictable results for your revenue.
So it's kind of more a holistic approach than just
Right.
focusing on your brand as it was previously.
Exactly. The challenge that came up is when you use the word brand, people make an assumption right there and then, oh, I don't need brand. Now, you and I know everybody needs brand. How you approach somebody, how you have a conversation, how you walk into a room is all brand. But in order to have that same conversation in a way that reflected on the individual need, that's sort of where the evolution of the tagline came from, leaning more on all the pieces as opposed to that one overarching piece being brand.
And it's interesting because you say everybody needs branding. The other thing that is a truth is that everybody has a brand, whether they've worked to put it together or not.
Absolutely.
As soon as you meet somebody, you've met their brand.
Yes.
You've interpreted as you see it. You've judged, if you want, their brand within the first few seconds of meeting a person, whether it's just a, an informal person to person meeting, whether it's a business meeting, any kind of interaction with a person or business. There's a brand there. So it's not just needing a brand; it's needing to improve the brand you already have.
Right. And to have that authenticity come through, whether it's meeting somebody in a coffee shop. One of the pieces that I always find the most interesting is when you meet somebody, whether it's virtually, whether it's in person, do the pieces line up, right? When you go to their website, when you meet them through DMs on LinkedIn, when you go to their Instagram page, wherever you go, all those pieces need to connect. And what I've been finding over the years is, in a lot of cases, those pieces are disconnected. And let's look at fractionals in that sense. A lot of fractionals will leave their corporate world, and for whatever reason they do, given today's movement, there's a lot more fractionals coming out. There's a lot more solo operators that are going to be out there. I like to reference it as there's a wave coming of more and more solo operators. Now, each of those people has a skill set. They spent decades building that skill set, building that knowledge base. But what they don't realize is when they go out solo, that breaks down. It becomes disconnected because the brand that they were using, the marketing they were using, the voice they were using was that corporate place that they came from, that corporate world that they grew up in. Doesn't matter if it's agency, doesn't matter whether you're marketing. I've spoken to salespeople that don't know how to sell online. I've spoken to marketers that don't know how to market themselves, right? It becomes a different game. So to connect all those pieces, to make sure that they all line up so that that brand becomes a flow of everything you do.
It reminds me of when I was dating a few years ago, and you'd look at somebody's profile on the Tinder, right? And then you'd meet them in person and things wouldn't line up, right? The pictures that you saw on their profile and the person in front of you were like two different, like apples and oranges. So that's kind of a great example of bad branding right there. They just lost all credibility before I've even said hello to to that person, right?
Right.
Same kind of thing.
But you want that to line up. You want that message, that feeling that you get, that emotional connection or reaction that somebody has when they see a piece of content, when they speak to you in DMs, whether they speak to you in person, right? You need to be able to keep that consistency across the board and have it show up authentically. I had a conversation the other day that fell along these lines, and what came out of it is the fact that you can go out and follow Hermosi or follow Demertel and take all the pieces that they teach you and put them together, and you end up with a really expensive go-kart, right? Because they're not authentic to you. They're not in alignment with you. Some people will say do video. Some people will say do content. If it's not in alignment to you as an individual, it creates friction. And friction eventually slows things down or stops it. So to have that lineup, to build that engine around the individual is where the value comes in. And again, on the fractional side, I find that there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of, like I was saying, a lot more fractionals that are coming out. So there's going to be even a lot more noise. And the ones that stand out among that, the ones that build their engine to bring in leads while their heads down working, while they're focused on the 3 to 5 clients that they have, so that when 1 or 2 clients comes to an end, that's warmed up. There's things still moving. There's pieces still evolving, so that they're not always, well, now I need 2 clients. Where are they going to come from?
Yeah, and I think you touched on something that is a bit of a trap for fractionals, and I think really for everybody, which is we one day the light bulb goes off and it's like, oh, I need to change my brand or I need to improve my brand. And instead of looking inwards and asking yourself the tough questions of, well, what makes me feel authentic? What works for me, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many of these, brand gurus out there,
Right.
right? Tony Robbins and Gary Vee and the Hormozis and all the ones, right? It's so easy to go and just look at, well, let me go see what they're doing because they're obviously doing something right. And then, like you said, it's kind of like you go shopping at the supermarket and you're buying the most popular products. You check out with a cart full of 50 different, top sellers. Then you get home and you're like, how do I turn this into dinner? Into something that I want to eat.
Right.
There's nothing here that I like. And it's a big trap because it's so much easier to go and see what's working for them. I guess it'll work for me versus going the tougher route of maybe observing what's working for other people, try to understand beyond the material reason of why is it working, and then interpreting that through your own lens to make it yours, make it authentic, and make it something that's going to be, resonate with you, which will then resonate with your target market.
And that's really the goal, is to bring out that unique value, right? If you look at a sales call, it's not about the tactics that you throw in front of somebody, right? Because as you just pointed out, there's tactics all over there, all over the place. People can pick them up, put them together, and use them. The real goal is, can you help the person that you're speaking to? And are you the person to help them solve that problem? Right? If you're not, then you can't help them, right? No matter how it rolls out. They might go, okay, they have all the right tactics, but nothing makes you unique in that sense. Everybody has the access to the same tactics. Even piecing them together in different ways, it still becomes the same thing. So to come out with that unique value that you bring, to be able to express that, to connect with and you might not be for everybody, and that's okay, but to connect with that right person, that's how you'll end up working with people you like, right? Could you imagine every single client that you worked with, the flow is just there and it was easy and there was no friction and they saw value in everything you brought to the table? Like, how fun would that be? How much more enjoyable would your job be? And that's really the goal.
Yeah, kind of like shooting fish in a barrel, and make sure that you're shooting in the right barrel, so to speak. And we talk about tactics. More and more people are relying on AI to do the heavy lifting on the tactics part, and that's where I think the human side of the equation is more and more protected. That mode is there because the AI might be good at the tactics, but it's nothing AI so far at least has replaced a person who can present themselves in front of another person, whether it's on a phone call or a virtual meeting or an in-person meeting, and right away project some kind of human connection that AI, cannot do. And even if the person, we've seen it before, right, where the best salesperson may not be the best at the tactics, but man, can they charm somebody. The second you meet them, you feel warm, you feel warmth, you feel confidence in them. You're ready to listen to anything they tell you, right? So that's something that AI is not there with yet and is not so much tactically related.
It's interesting. AI is a great multiplier. And that's where where I come from, that side of using AI to help buy back your time is valuable, to help you process information. There's a lot of value in what it brings. And the reality is, for a solo operator, AI is the new employee that you never had, right? So there's a lot of value in that. When AI first came out, I was having a conversation, and I said it with, I just brought on 5 employees, and they're like, 5? I'm like, yeah, and I built them the day before, right? So it just came out that I set up things in a way that allowed stuff to get processed that I would have normally put off somewhere else to an employee. So great multiplier, but the human aspect still needs to be there, especially when we're talking about fractional. We're not talking about $100 widgets, right? We're talking about um, bigger and more in-depth pieces, right? Our involvement in a project, where we come into the project, right? How much involvement we have there. So that changes where AI comes into that process. And to have that conversation, I like to say that conversions happen in conversation, right? So to have AI control that for smaller purchases, so to speak, for smaller ticket items, I think works well.
Mhm.
But people want to know who they're going to work with. People want to connect with real people. When you're looking at a higher ticket purchase where you're bringing somebody in to help run a specific area of your company, I don't think AI can solve that yet.
I want to come back to AI, but I want to go back, first of all, to your journey of how you got to the fractional life yourself. And I know that you've lived a number of different multiple professional lives. You did some agency work, CMO roles. You shared with me a story where you helped scale an agency from 2.5 million in revenue, doubled it in just 18 months.
Right.
And then despite that success, you walked away from agency life entirely. What happened there?
Um, yeah, I mean, really, I worked agency for the first 15 years of my career. From there, I decided it was time to start my own. So I started my own agency. During the pandemic, a colleague of mine reached out and said, "Hey, like I need your help." My agency was running into a little trouble. He was 10 years ahead, right? So I had the opportunity to join him, to learn from him, and at the same time, we dug deep. We really just we stripped his agency down to the studs, um, broke it down, rebuilt it, and doubled the revenue. From there, the goal that seemed um, the right path was to start a new agency. So I left, started setting everything up, had all the systems in place, had everything in place to start a new agency. And I guess it was about 4 or 5 months in, I was on a sales call and I finished the call, got off the call, and I said out loud, like, I don't want to fucking agency. And I didn't want that. I didn't want the agency life anymore. Um, what I wanted to do was help people. What I wanted to do was take all the knowledge that I had built over time and be able to express that, to be able to provide value and do that one-on-one. I had done the courses, the programs, the group programs, and realized that where those disconnected was that one-on-one aspect of things. And that's how I run things today, where a lot of the value I bring to CEOs, to operators themselves, is one-on-one. I work with them to dig into where that core problem is and really solve it.
And making the transition to being a fractional, perhaps in your case, was a little bit easier than somebody coming out of, decades of just corporate life,
Right.
because you had a bit of, agency, a little bit of entrepreneurial experience as well. Kind of like this, more of my background, but we've had a lot of people in the Fractional Pros Canada community who have only been corporate life their whole careers. Have had a few on the podcast, very, very senior positions, C-suite level positions in, brand name companies that every Canadian would recognize, and they go fractional, and it's, it's very freeing at the beginning. It's like, oh, I can choose my clients, I can choose my schedule, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. But then the panic sets in where it's like, hang on, how do I get a client? And then you get a client, it's like celebration, I got a client. And then that entrepreneurial roller coaster kicks back in
Right.
and you start nosediving because like, what do I do with this client?
And as much as going from agency to running an agency to building that structure was part of my journey, I still had to re-enter that solo venture, that solo journey again. So I went through those same things, um, realizing that, you can have a handful of clients, but when one leaves and you're head down working with those clients, you realize your system's failed. You realize that you need more, right? Um, a lot of, again, when I was saying before, a lot of the value that you have working for a corporation, sales guys that work in bigger companies that are selling like crazy and top producers that leave to sell on their own and can't sell, right? They lose that value that the corporate entity provides for you. So you really have to step back and get clear on what it is that you're providing, the value that you bring, that unique value that you provide. Um, Align that to you as an individual, right? How do you provide that? Making sure on both sides, not only what you put out, but how that feels for you as an individual. Then build your messaging and build your position, right? You really have to cut through the noise that's out there, and you have to be that one that gets seen. So there's all that aspect to things, and then you have to sell. And sales has this sort of four-letter word feeling to it, but at the same time, um, it's not really, you don't have to convince. You just have to find people that see the value in what you bring, be able to hear what they need and solve that problem. And if you can solve that problem, and if you like each other, and if you find a way to work together in that sense, you put in monetary value to it. And if you both agree to that, then you close the sale. Right. So it doesn't need to be as complicated, but a lot of people don't know that part. A lot of people are really great at what they do, and they have no clue how to position themselves. Um, One of the sayings, and I posted about this just the other day, came up on a call. It's hard to read the label from inside the jar.
Yeah.
And even for myself, when I came back to out of corporate and started building this on my own, I realized that it is really hard to see that from that outside perspective. So to have a coach, to have a guide, to have somebody, an advisor to walk alongside you to help point those things out is invaluable. A lot of the pieces that I tried to label, that I tried to box in, um, really was what was holding me back. And it took a coach to point that out to me that completely changed my trajectory, completely changed how I do things. So I think that's the value in it as well, is fractionals are there to support other groups of people, but fractionals in themselves need people to help that. And that's one of the sides of things that you do with Fractional Pros, that I do working with fractionals and consultants and solo operators, because it's hard to go on your own and to not have somebody to talk to all the time. Um, makes a big difference.
Yeah, and you're talking about, another way to reframe what you said is, with not being able to read the label from inside the bottle, is working on the business versus in the
Of
business.
course.
But of course, one of the problems with fractionals when you're starting out is you don't know what you don't know. So
Yes.
you just know that what you're doing isn't working, but you don't know what you should be doing so that it
Right.
works. Big
And one of
challenge.
the problems I see often is a lot of solo operators in that sense know something's wrong. They can't pinpoint it, so they go back to the YouTube videos. They go back to that guru that says you should do this, so they do that, and it doesn't feel right, and something still feels a little bit off. Um, and that comes down to what I was saying at the beginning: is the fact that it has to be authentic, it has to be aligned to you, or it's always going to feel a little bit off. And not only if you can feel it, everybody else can feel it.
What do you coach fractionals when it comes to how they should present themselves in the marketplace? So, for example, I'm a fractional CMO. Should I be
Right.
going out to the market saying, "Hi, Mr. or Mrs. CEO, I am a fractional CMO with 40 years of marketing experience, and I can help you with your marketing problems"? Or should I be saying something else?
Listen more. Really, that's what it comes down to. Um, it's less about what you can do and more about the problem. And again, everybody thinks they have a unique problem, right? At this stage in a fractional career, you have a massive toolbox. It's not about bringing all the tools and showing all the tools. It's about your skill being able to bring the right tool out at the right time. So if you're speaking to somebody, the rule of thumb is to listen more, to hear what their pain is, to hear what the problem is, to see what is disconnected on their side, and truly see if you can help fix that. And if you can help fix that, then that's solving half the problem. That's moving in the right direction. From a positioning standpoint, it really depends on the story. It depends on your point of view. I think that's one of the main things um, to realize is to get clear on what your point of view is. How are you approaching things, right? As a CMO, what is your stance on the world, right? And how do you help solve these problems? Um, I think that's probably the best way to look at it, and then start talking about it, right? Start posting about it, start creating content around it. Um, People will see that content, they will relate to it, they will see some connection in it, right? The people that go, hey, that's me. I just did this, right? That's the person that might engage in the content. I like to say it doesn't matter if you get engagement, it's whether somebody reads it or not. If you've connected with somebody, you have a conversation, and it just so happens that one of your pieces of content answers the question that they're, or the problem they're feeling, right? The pain that they're feeling. They will read the content. They might not engage in it. They might not necessarily comment on it, but there's a good chance they'll read it. So as soon as they can see themselves in that, then that builds trust, right? So that brings up a really good point. Um, Really, that's the whole process, is to build trust. Whether you're producing content, whether you're having conversations in DMs, whether you're having conversations on calls like this, it's about building trust. And if you build enough trust where somebody can look at you as an advisor, a trusted advisor, then you're doing your job right. Right? That's the first step. To build that trust, to warm up that potential next client, to have them start following you, to have them read the content, reach out to you asking for potential advice. Um, that's where that conversation starts. And then you're going to be top of mind. Then you're going to be that next person that they will reach out to when they need something. Or maybe there's a pain that they're feeling right now that you can help solve. So to line that up, to get on a call and to see if you can work together.
Give us a bird's eye view, an insider view of the talk track of some of the questions that a fractional should be asking, right? We talked about, you mentioned listen more and ask more questions. So what are some of the what are the top 3 or 5 go-to questions that a fractional should ask that prospect in that first interaction?
I don't know if there's anything canned that needs to be asked. I find, again, all the conversations that I have are um, they guide themselves, right? I think there are some, maybe there's a list of questions you can write out, but if you start following a script, you start sounding like you're following a script. So I think actually I have something here that I use quite often. Get to it. When it comes down to it, the core to every conversation is, what's the goal? What's driving the goal? What else have you tried to solve that? What's holding you back? And those core questions, asked in different ways depending on how the conversation rolls out. If you answer those questions and you can then say, hey, I've solved that problem this way. And then there's a connection that way, basically that shift happens, where they then start seeing you as that advisor. So I think if you can answer those questions, so I guess the first question is, what's the goal? What are you trying to achieve?
And if we go back to how do I go to market as a fractional CMO in my case, you kind of touched on it, but where do you fall on niching down? And for example, instead of me just saying I'm a fractional CMO, I can help you with your marketing, and saying I'm a fractional CMO, and the best results that clients get is if they are doing, $10 to $50 million in revenue, are in the construction vertical,
Right.
et cetera, right? Really specific. What is your take on how specific should one get in presenting themselves to the marketplace?
I think there's value in the approach. If you find that you work very well with a specific group of people, there's nothing wrong with um, molding your conversation around that individual potential client. The flip side of it is if you position things as the niche being how you deliver the thing you do, right? So there are millions upon millions of people out there who need help, and there's millions of people who need marketing help. So is it about niching to a specific industry that needs that marketing help, which there's value in, or attracting the right person to you that needs that help and seeing if you like each other?
Intuitively, it sounds to me that going the first way is easier than the second way. Going out there and naming your target market and just really going after that target market, very niche, sounds a lot easier than what sounds like a bit of a tougher fishing expedition of kind of going out there and trying to. It almost gets more almost more like I guess back to the dating analogy, where I'm trying to find somebody who I like, who I want to hang out with,
Right.
and a little bit less about the solution. What's your take on that?
Um, on one side, you could be limiting yourself, right? But at the other side, it's knowing yourself. If you know that's like right down to the type of person you work the best with, the type of conversations you have that flow the best, and it happens to be in a specific industry, then that's fantastic. Um, when you, just perfect example, I could look at it as I can help fractionals or I can help fractional CMOs, right? So if I want to go to that one channel, I can do that. At this stage, helping consultants, helping fractionals, helping solo operators, uh, the way to do that always ends up being the same. It's the same process. It's the same steps. It's the same. It's the individual that becomes that unique blueprint, right? Building the engine around them, as opposed to niching down and then treating everybody the same, because not everybody is the same. Um, I could focus on one specific industry, but then everybody in that industry might have different problems. So I think there's a variable there. I do agree that um, if you solve that problem, if you focus on a niche and it works well for you, and you have all the answers for it, and everybody comes to you for those answers, then fantastic, you've solved the problem.
What do you see as the number one mistake that fractionals make?
Number one, there's so many. No, um, number one.
Pick your favorite child.
um, not expecting if you build it, they will come. Just because you put up a website doesn't mean you're going to get traffic to the website. Just because you put up a piece of content doesn't mean that everybody's going to see that one piece of content. So consistency in those cases. Yeah, I think that would be the main thing. A lot of people look at the skill they have. They come out of whatever industry they were in, and they're like I killed it in this industry. There's a lot of really smart people out there, but they don't know what they don't know, and they go, hey, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna build my own thing, and I'm gonna have 10 clients beating down my door tomorrow, and then they don't. Then they hear crickets, and they wonder why. And then same routine, they start DIYing it. They try one thing, they try another thing, they can't figure out why it's not working. It's because those things aren't connected to them. Um, so yeah, it's not letting that insistence on DIY go too far down that you have one client and you're just a really you basically become an employee again, but without the benefits, without the vacation time.
I want to get back to AI and talk tactically. How are you using AI, first of all, in your own business?
Analysis, research, a lot of the smaller tasks that would take weeks to do. One of the most valuable tools that I've put together is when I start engaging any client, we do a 90-minute session. That 90-minute session goes deep into, like, goes past the business pains. Basically, it goes deep into them as a person. I then take a lot of that information and I break it down into a plan for the next 90-day engagement. And what would have taken a week to put together to really dig into the insight behind it, I now have an agent that helps me do that, that pulls out some of the insight of things so that I'll go through the script, I'll take the conversation that we had, and then I'll let the agent go through and do the same thing and see if it lines up, and then use that to build out the next steps. Content is another place. There's an aspect to letting AI do it for you. Then there's another aspect about taking something that's true to you, taking something that's more conversational, something from a story, for example. I take a lot of my content from calls that I've had. I take a lot of that initial thought and I drop it into an agent that I built to help me create content and have that conversation. It helps me brainstorm the content. And then I write the final piece and then post it. I don't let it do the work for me. I use it to brainstorm. I find that's another way that I've used AI as well, is sometimes when you have that single operator stance and you're in your office for however number of hours and you're trying to figure something out, having that ability to brainstorm with AI helps move things forward. It gives you different ideas. It looks at things ways that you might not have looked at them. So that's another way that I use it. And building a lot of spreadsheets. Right now I have all my frameworks in Claude. So when I look at any project that I'm moving forward, I will then ask it to grab the framework from Notion, pull it in front of me, and use this particular framework to do the work. So there's a lot of cases where I take my library of all the tools that I've built over the years and basically ask it to get the tool for me.
So you're using AI to help you with delivery, which makes total sense. A lot of fractionals more and more are running into resistance from clients who, when they get to the pricing part,
Right.
the client's like, well, that price seems really high, especially because you just told me that you have AI help you with delivery. So it must be taking you a lot less time than it used to. So why is your price not reflecting?
The value being the operator, knowing how to use the tool, that's really where it comes down to. If they could build it themselves, they would. Right. So if you come into a project, I don't work hourly, for example, right? So if I come into an engagement, the price is based on the 30 years experience that I bring. The price is based on what the value that I bring to the table. It has nothing to do with how I do the work. If I can use AI to multiply that so that the value goes up, then why not?
Yeah, and I'm playing devil's advocate, right? Because I totally agree with what you just said. But the reality is, more and more fractionals are getting pushed
Right.
back, and we're seeing more and more, clients, businesses. In an extreme example, who will, probably a couple of years ago when GPT first came out, who literally said, "Well, I guess I don't need a marketing department anymore because now I can just use Chat
Right.
GPT," and we all know how that ends up or how it ended up. And but still, there is that kind of psychological framing of, if you're using robots to do the heavy lifting, then why should I pay you what I used to pay you before when there weren't robots?
I think when it comes down to it is there's a bigger opportunity for solo operators to build a bigger machine using AI to do that. The strategy, the value that you bring in that strategy and being the director is still there. AI isn't replacing that. So when I look at bringing AI into my own systems, um, here's a perfect example. Claude is a better designer. GPT Codex is a better developer. And I have had these conversations with both of them where I've told them that I'm pitting them against each other to see how they do. And that's how I use that level of AI where it becomes that employee. I looked at when I was working agency, and if I was going in and directing a website, for example, how would I do that? And I'm doing the same thing now as the strategist, as the um, director of marketing, so to speak, to come in and do that same task without the individual employee to do it. So as a solo operator, I can start building things that I normally wouldn't be able to do without bringing on a whole team to do it. So there's value there as well. I think when it comes to uh, high level of sort of intelligence in that sense and using that from a strategy, from a human standpoint, I don't think that's the part that you do need in a system to do the underlying pieces. I don't think you should be penalized for that.
There's a slice of fractionals and people working in the corporate world as well, who might be in the older demographic,
Right.
who might never have really been, ones who adopted new technology. It kind of ended at using Word and Excel. And now this AI thing comes along, and they know that if they don't keep up with it, their competitors are going to eat their lunch. But at the same time, there's just so much internal resistance. They just can't get their head around it. And
Right.
they're kind of just burying the head in the sand and hoping, AI will just flame out, go away, and their, old school skills will triumph at the end of the day. What do you say to those fractionals who are literally missing the boat if they don't
Right.
jump onto the AI bandwagon in some respect?
There is an aspect of um, through their careers. For example, I spoke to a guy years ago now who worked at IBM, and he started in sales, and he would bring a VHS tape or a beta tape, I forget at the time in the 70s, into the business that he was going to as his sales presentation, right? That was his VSL. So, you know, that was the technology then. The technology's changed. So, in the past 40 years, 50 years, these same fractionals have learned I mean, there's such a change in tools. Um, when I started in advertising, we were the first year using computers versus paste up, right? So that was a big transition. Um, but we learned, we adapted, and we adopted the tools. So I think it's the same process. The benefit is they have a massive amount of knowledge to provide this system, to provide this tool. And if you treat it as such, um, there's a benefit to using voice, right? Speaking to GPT, for example, or Claude, and just speaking to it. If you speak to it as an employee, as you would an employee, what changes, right? So using the tool in that same sense, how would you direct an employee to do the same job? Right. So then the change isn't really there. It's not as dramatic. Now, when we're talking about more deeper aspects of AI, that's a different story. If it's required for your job, then learning it is important. But from a solo operation standpoint, using that connection to treating it as though you would an employee, I think is valuable. I think that's an easier way to learn it. And then just keeping up with the tools as they change, being able to connect, connect the tools, Claude to Miro or to Notion or Canva, any of those. I think there's an aspect to technology that's easy, and I think that AI can make it easier too if you look at it from the right perspective.
One of my favorite analogies or descriptions of AI is that you should treat it as a junior assistant, right? So junior assistant wants to please you, is not going to ask that many questions when they're not sure about something. They're just going to make assumptions and go ahead and do it. And they're eager to please you, and they're also happy to get your feedback, but they don't want to bother you for it. They don't want to disappoint you. So it's kind of like that junior assistant who's got a depth of a lot of knowledge, but lacks the finesse, lacks the experience. And that's where the human part needs to come in and be there. And some people say, keep the human in the loop. I say, keep the human in the lead.
Yes. That's exactly where you need to be. You are the guide, right? It is a tool that has access to an immense amount of knowledge. Use it accordingly, right? But be the guide. It's funny because I always ask my tools to stop being a people pleaser. So that's a tough one, and it always slips back in. It's like you're getting into the people pleasing side of things, right?
Yeah. One wonders if all these tools were built, at least the first versions, in the image of their founder. Right. What does that tell us about the ego of the founder? All right, Robin, let's wrap this up with our always last question on the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. If you could put one message on a billboard for millions of fractionals and business leaders to see as they drive by it every day on the highway of life, what would that one message be?
Tough one. Leverage makes revenue predictable. No.
Final answer?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. If there's one message, and it's funny because I had a piece of content I was working on this morning that I think really lines it up well. Actually, it's what did it say? You can have everything you want if you help other people get what they want.
You can have everything you want if you can help other people get everything they want. All right. I think that's a good message for the billboard. Robin, thanks for sharing with us today here on the Fractional Pros Canada podcast.
I appreciate your time today.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. If you're a fractional professional based in Canada, we'd love to have you join us in the Fractional Pros Canada Facebook group, the home for Canada's fractional community. It's where Canadian fractional executives connect, share insights, and help each other succeed. Until next time, I'm Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO. May your impact be full-time, even if your hours are fractional.